Hello friends, and welcome to my review for Sunbreak's second free title update. In this update, we were given 3 new monsters as well as some cosmetic system changes and additions. Without further ado, this is title update number 2. First, let's jump into the new monsters introduced in this update. As usual, I will go over each monster's moveset, visual design, and overall difficulty level, finishing my thoughts with a rating out of 10. First up is the smoldering subspecies, Flaming Espinas. Flaming Espinas has evolved out of its green skin into a hardened brown shell. This subspecies is also much larger in size than its original. Although this monster has sacrificed its ability to paralyze the player, its poison and fire blight attacks are greatly enhanced as a result. This monster may also apply a defense debuff with certain attacks. When fighting this monster, I didn't notice a difference in speed from its original, but instead a few more variations of its basic charge attack. Flaming Espinas may now use a delayed shoulder tackle that will lead into a fireball. If Flaming Espinas is enraged, the shoulder tackle will be followed by a charge attack and then the fireball. I appreciate this follow-up because it's a good punishment for players abusing counters. These are exactly the kinds of attacks I want to see for every monster moving forward. Not only are changing animations and timings important, but adding layers to these attacks is what keeps these subspecies and variants so fresh to hunt. Flaming Espinas now has 2 jump attacks instead of 1, and its fireball attacks now resemble Silver Rathalos' fireballs, causing additional explosions in a straight line. I think this is an especially tricky addition because of how long the residual flames last after these fireballs come out. Not only is it easier than ever to get hit by these fireballs, but even walking nearby will apply poison and fire blight to the player. Let's wrap up with Flaming Espinas' new finishing attack. Flaming Espinas stands tall, charging up its power while walking slowly towards the player. After a few seconds, it will fire downwards, launching itself into the air. This may be followed up by an additional fireball that tracks the player. If you don't die from the initial hit of this attack, you will still have poison and fire blight to deal with afterwards. I'm giving Flaming Espinas an 8 out of 10. Although I enjoy this monster's fight, I feel as if this should have been the default version of Espinas all along. Its weapons, armor, and most of its attacks are very similar if not the same as before. The monster itself is great, but as a subspecies it just makes the original Espinas feel unfinished. Next up is the Blazing Fox rare species, Violet Mizutsune. Violet Mizutsune's scales emanate a violet glow and its fur is ashy black. This rare species monster has adapted to the opposing element of its predecessor, using molten fire as its primary method of attack. This monster has an abundance of new attacks as well as mixing multiple old attacks into one new motion. Violet Mizutsune's bubbles now track the player, causing damage and fire blight when hit. These bubble attacks may also be gathered together for one concentrated projectile attack. Violet Mizutsune has a few new physical attacks to go with these new bubbles. This monster may now finish its spinning tail swipe attack with a backflip tail slam. Original Mizutsune had a lunging double claw attack. With this new subspecies, the second claw is wound up, causing an explosion when hitting the ground. Additionally, Violet Mizutsune has a new double slash attack when enraged that has exceptional speed and a punishing hitbox. This monster's finishing attack has easily become my favorite of any monster in the whole series. Violet Mizutsune begins dancing, summoning a giant orb of blue flames. This orb is then launched into the sky, becoming stationary. Violet Mizutsune will then attack the player freely. After a few moments, Violet Mizutsune will create a giant storm pulling the player towards the eye. The monster finishes by launching the orb down at the ground, creating a deadly explosion. The reason why I find this finisher so incredible is in both its visuals and its functionality. If the player flinches the monster while the orb is in the sky, the finishing attack will backfire, falling directly onto its caster. This is yet another awesome interaction that directly rewards the player for their aggressive play. I would really love to see more of these interactions in the future. Violet Mizutsune receives a 9 out of 10. a wonderful addition that I will be hunting 1,000 times over. To end this section, let me introduce to you the new Risen variants of monsters that are not only in this title update, but in updates to come. Risen monsters are a product of Kurio becoming symbiotic with their host. It is believed that Elder Dragons are the only monsters capable of this, which has led to theories of which Risen Elder Dragon we will see next. The concept is definitely interesting, but with Chameleos being the test subject, how's the execution? Risen Chameleos looks very similar to its original with a slight gray tinge covering some of its scales. This seems to bleed into its wing patterns as well. After a few minutes of combat, some of the monster's features begin to glow white, notably in its face, wings, tail, and chest. Instead of this monster becoming enraged, it will activate its new Risen state. When a Risen monster is low on health, it will go into this state more often. This Risen state gives Chameleos access to a few new attacks as well as an overall speed and damage buff. Risen Chameleos has a handful of new tongue attacks that give a defense debuff on hit. Other physical attacks include a double head swipe that is invisible to the player, and a few altered animations for old claw and tail attacks. Risen Chameleos may now fly above the player, launching waves of poison in a large area. Additionally, this monster has a new double poison spray attack that is quite fast and difficult to avoid. Finally, Risen Chameleos has not one, but two finishing attacks. Risen Chameleos erupts with poison, creating a meteor shower of poison orbs in a large area. This is followed up by a double spray attack and finished with a heavy spray attack in a large cone shape. This monster's second finisher begins in the same way, spraying poison at the monster's feet. Risen Chameleos then turns around and detonates this field with a tail slam. Risen Chameleos gets a 7 out of 10. Original Chameleos is one of my least favorite monsters in this series, but I think this new Risen variant took away a lot of what made that monster frustrating to begin with. The overuse of shifting poison clouds was incredibly unfun in my opinion, but from the few hunts I've finished, Risen Chameleos seems to use those attacks significantly less than its predecessor. So far, the Risen Elder Dragon gimmick has my attention, and I'm looking forward to which one comes next. Okay, here comes the part of the video where I need to remind the viewers to put down their pitchforks and remember that what I'm about to say is solely based on a grumpy man's opinion about corporations he both equally loves and despises at the same time. If this isn't how you feel personally, that's totally fine. The two topics I want to briefly discuss are the new layered weapons and cosmetic DLC items added to the game. These work somewhat hand in hand with each other, so put on your tinfoil hats and join me for this rant. I have no clue why Capcom felt the need to completely rob their players of layered weapons until now. Prior to this update, the only layered options that were available to the player were exclusively for Rampage weapons. A year and a half after this game's release, layered weapons are something Capcom just now finished implementing? I find it interesting that paid layered weapon DLC is released in the exact same update. I don't have anything against supporting the companies that make the games you love to play, but Capcom has a history of these egregious cash grabs at this point. One of the biggest examples of this is the lack of crossplay between PC and Switch for Monster Hunter Sunbreak. I'm not an expert in game design by any means, but the Wii U and 3DS could play Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate crossplay with no issues, and that game is almost 11 years old. This leads me to believe that Capcom wants players to purchase the game on both Switch and PC depending on what friends they want to hunt with. I genuinely believe that Capcom withholds essential or otherwise enjoyable features from the player so that they can put a price tag on it in the future. If you were to guess how much Monster Hunter Sunbreak is with all of its DLC included, what number would you say? If any of you said $500, congratulations. Expect this price to go up in the future as Capcom will certainly save their best designs for more of your money. Alright, let's take the tinfoil hats off and finish this review. I'm giving this free title update an 8 out of 10. From this point on, all we can expect from these updates are new monsters, so I'm basing this score almost entirely on that. I especially love Violet Mizutsune, and the new Risen variants are something to look forward to in the future. Hey, thanks for watching my review of Sunbreak's second free title update. If you enjoyed the video, consider giving it a like and subscribing to the channel for future videos. There's a link in the description for my Discord where we talk about all things Monster Hunter and games in general. It'd be awesome if you'd check that out. I'm occasionally active on Twitch and Twitter, so links to those will be in the description as well. Thank you so much for watching, and have a great day.